Okay, so let's talk about a book that is, and I'm not kidding, the great grandfather of every single psychological thriller you have ever loved. Seriously, forget everything you think you know about dusty old Russian classics because Crime and Punishment is a tense, sweaty, can't put it down, deep dive into a killer's mind. It's less about the who done it and all about the why on earth did he do it, and maybe even more important, what in the world happens to your brain after you do something that terrible. So, let me ask you a question and be honest. Have you ever had one of those moments where you felt so smart, so special, that you thought maybe, just maybe, the normal rules of the world shouldn't really apply to you? It's a tempting thought, isn't it? Well, that little thought, that tiny little seed of pride, Dostoevsky takes it and lets it grow into a truly terrifying tree. And that terrifying thought, well, it belongs to our main character. To really get what's going on with the crime, we first have to understand the man and the city that kind of cooked him up in the first place. So meet Rodion Romanovich Raskolnikov. On the outside, he's described as exceptionally handsome. He's brilliant, he's intense, but underneath all that, oh, he is a complete and total wreck. He's a former law student who is so incredibly broke that he's been dodging his landlady and has barely eaten in 2 days. He's living in the suffocating summer heat of St. Petersburg, a city that Dostoevsky paints as being full of poverty, drunks, and this awful, special Petersburg stench. So his world isn't just unpleasant, it's actively crushing his mind. And this quote just gets right to the heart of it all. His room isn't a home, it's a cage. It's so small, it feels like he's being buried alive. And, this physical confinement, it perfectly mirrors his mental state. He's trapped by poverty, for sure, but he is even more trapped inside his own head, just pacing back and forth, wrestling with this fearful, frenzied, and fantastic question. He's at the point where he's pawning his last sentimental treasures, like his father's watch, to a cruel old pawnbroker just to get a few coins. So what does a brilliant, proud, and completely desperate man do when he's trapped in a box? Well, he thinks his way out. Raskolnikov comes up with this idea, which is basically the ultimate I'm not like other guys argument. He believes that history is pushed forward by a few extraordinary men, like Napoleon, who aren't bound by the same moral laws as the rest of us ordinary folk. He thinks they have the right, even the duty, to step over obstacles, and yeah, that includes other people, for some greater good. And he's got one burning question. Is he one of them? Okay, so you can probably see where this is all going. If you haven't read the book yet, consider this your super friendly spoiler alert. We are about to get into the crime and its immediate, just disastrous fallout. Because, as you're about to see, there's a massive, massive difference between thinking about murder and actually doing it. Now, this is the absolute heart of the book, the real anatomy of this crime. It isn't about the police investigation, not really. It's about the psychological bomb that goes off inside Raskolnikov's head the very second he brings that axe down. And what he finds out is that there's this huge, terrifying gap between his big theory and cold, hard reality. And this just lays out the total disconnect, right? In his mind, he's this cold, calculating Superman, making a grand philosophical statement. But in reality, he's a mess. He forgets things, his hands are trembling, he almost completely botches the whole thing. The murder is clumsy and brutal and just horrifyingly real. He doesn't feel liberated at all. He immediately collapses into a fever, he's paranoid. He literally just lies on his sofa for days, unable to function, terrified of every single knock on his door. So here's the incredible irony, and this is so crucial. His grand act of free will, the one that was supposed to prove he was above it all, completely destroys his sense of free will. The moment he goes through with it, he feels like a puppet on a string. He's not a master of his destiny anymore. He's a slave to what he's done. He thought he was choosing freedom, but what he actually chose was a prison far worse than any jail cell could ever be. And this right here, this is his real punishment. It's not the police, it's this feeling. The murder doesn't connect him to the great men of history. It just severs him from all of humanity. He can't even stand to be with his own mother and sister, the very people he supposedly did this for. Every act of kindness feels like an accusation. He is just utterly, terrifyingly alone in his own head. And that is a much greater torture than any legal sentence. Dostoevsky is an absolute master of the big philosophical debate, and this book is just packed with them. The battle for Raskolnikov's soul isn't just fought inside his own mind. It's waged in these incredible conversations with some of the most memorable characters in all of literature. So let's look at 3 quotes that really get to the core of everything. This is it. This is the question that haunts him from page 1. He's not asking if he has the legal right, he knows he doesn't. He's asking if he has some kind of innate right, if he is fundamentally a different kind of being. It's the ultimate test of his own self-worth, and he is desperate to prove that he's not just another louse, which is his charming term for ordinary people. Now, this comes from Porfiry Petrovich, the brilliant and super unconventional police investigator who's playing this incredible cat-and-mouse game with Raskolnikov. And he suggests something totally radical. He says maybe the point isn't to escape punishment. Maybe true freedom actually comes from accepting your suffering, from embracing the punishment. Because inside that pain, there's meaning. There's a path back to humanity. And this is where that path begins. It's with Sonia, a young woman who's been forced into prostitution to support her family, but who somehow holds on to this unshakable religious faith. In this moment, Raskolnikov finally just breaks. By kissing her foot, this incredibly proud, intellectual man isn't just humbling himself before her, he's bowing down to the idea of all human suffering. It is the very first crack in the armor of his pride, and the first real step away from his monstrous theory and back toward connection. So why should we care about this 150-year-old story of a troubled student in Russia? Because, honestly, it feels like it could have been written yesterday. The anxieties at its core are just so incredibly modern. I mean, think about it. A smart, isolated young man gets radicalized by an idea he found somewhere and starts believing it gives him permission to commit violence? That is the danger of ideology, and we see it play out online every single day. The feeling of being totally alone and anonymous in a huge, overwhelming city, we still feel that. And the constant pressure to be special, to be extraordinary, to stand out from the crowd, I mean, that's basically the engine of social media, isn't it? The book grapples with all of it. So at the end of the day, the reason Crime and Punishment endures is because the crime itself is almost secondary. The real story is the war that happens inside one man's mind. It's the battle between intellectual pride and human compassion, between isolation and connection, between a terrifying ideology and the simple, painful reality of guilt. It really is one of the most profound psychological explorations ever written. Which leaves us with a final question. Raskolnikov thought being extraordinary meant having the right to kill for a higher purpose. But the book suggests that maybe it's something else entirely. Maybe it's the capacity for compassion, for humility, for love. So, what do you think? What makes a life truly extraordinary? If you've read the book, I would absolutely love to hear your take. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.